Hello and welcome back to KSP Real Solar System Campaign. We are back on Earth after a rather long interplanetary mission where we went to visit 3 of the 4 outer planets, plus Pluto of course. Now for this episode and the coming few episodes I'm going to be working on some infrastructure in the Earth-Moon system. And the first part of that will be a space station in orbit around Earth, and I'm launching the core of that particular space station on this rocket here, as you can see. The space station must at least satisfy the criteria set down in this particular mission here, which includes having compartments for at least 4 kerbals, as well as an orbit between 250 and 2000 kilometers. I'm aiming for a orbit between, well, around 300 kilometers, circular orbits that is. The space station must also function as a fuel depot for incoming and outgoing spacecraft that are on various missions, and it must also have all of the most advanced laboratories and scientific modules. You can get a clearer view of the space station core from this picture here, and yeah, you can see that it is basically a stick with some fuel tanks attached to it, some RCS, avionics package, etc. Now the important thing is that at each end of the core there is a node, and each node has 5 docking ports, and those docking ports will be used to attach all of the space station modules. And the plan is to have all of the support modules on one end and all of the crew compartments on the other end. So we'll have one end with the life support systems, power generators, fuel depot, etc. And the other end will have the crew compartment itself, the laboratories, the scientific modules, and a docking bay for not only capsules but also a space shuttle, because we are reviving our space shuttle for this particular project. I also mentioned the fuel depot function that we'll build into this station, and also the moon station in the future, and that is going to be one of the most important functions on this station. Because if you have a fuel depot, incoming and outgoing spacecraft can really extend their delta V capacity by refueling in orbit, and that is something I think will be really useful in the future. And after a successful launch, the space station core has reached its designated orbit of roughly 300 kilometers. The space station core has very limited power generation capabilities by itself, so on the next launch I'm launching a power generator with some large solar panels and some radiators, and yeah, this is just a fairly basic support module that is going to go on the one end of the core that includes all of the other supply and support modules as well. The first step here is to launch the power generator into a parking orbit around Earth, and from there on we'll be planning our rendezvous with the space station core. Correcting the inclination after you have launched to orbit is usually not recommended and takes a heck of a lot of fuel, so you gotta get it right from the launch and onwards. And with a little bit of planning with the maneuver system, it does look like we are launched on a fairly good orbit, and that it shouldn't take too much fuel to rendezvous with the space station core. And of course we have plenty of fuel here, way more than we actually need. After the first rendezvous burn, it's just a matter of time before we get to the closest approach to the space station core. And after that we just need to cancel our relative velocity, so we get in roughly synchronous orbits, and then yeah, it's a matter of getting the spacecraft actually docked to the core. I did make one design mistake here on this rocket, which is that the orange fuel tank you can see and the engine is not detachable, so I had to dock with the entire thing because the power generator does not have any RCS by itself and has really no control unit, so I had to dock with this giant rocket. But it wasn't actually too bad, at least not compared to the docking problems I'm going to have later on, but we will get to that. The next module to be launched is going to be the life support module, which will not only contain supply tanks and waste disposal tanks, but also recyclers and water purifiers and stuff like that, as well as a few solar panels for good measure. Now this module is a bit heavier than the two previous modules, which is why it has 4 SRBs instead of 2 on the first stage. I also had to be careful that I launched with the correct inclination, which is something I talked about before, so I'm not pointing at the 90-degree angle on the compass there. Instead I'm going a bit lower because that's just to get a orbit that has the same inclination as the space station has. Again, I did try to set up a maneuver node that would simplify the rendezvous a little bit, but yeah, as it turns out, I kind of missed. Well, I don't think I got the exact inclination I wanted, but I did mess things up a little bit. I had to go out to a very high orbit because I was too far ahead of the space station when I launched, so I had to slow a bit down, but that caused all sorts of problems, and it was actually really difficult to get this to do a proper rendezvous with the space station, and I struggled quite a lot before I got to the point where I could cancel out the relative velocity to the space station and thereby do an actual docking maneuver. But in the end I did manage to get a decent enough close approach to the station. Now the rendezvous here was not that difficult compared to the docking itself, which turned out to be an absolute pain. And yeah, I thought I was going to learn from the previous docking I did on this station by having a tug at the end of the life support module. Now the space tug is also going to be used later on for, well, maybe reassembling the station. But anyway, I did not want to dock with that big tank at the end, because that's kind of unwieldy, so I made the tug fully operable by itself. The plan was that the tug would steer the life support module into the correct docking port, and that would be it, but the problem is that the life support module is really heavy compared to the tug itself, but the life support module does not have any engines of itself, and the only engines are sitting on the tug. So it's kind of like, wielding a stick with a really heavy weight at one end, and it is completely unbalanced and just a major pain in the, you know where. I tried a variety of different approaches and methods to get this life support module docked, but yeah, with the tug sitting where it is, right at the end and so far away from the central mass, it's just any movement you try to make induces a spin, and the spin will completely throw your target indicator off, and yeah, it just didn't work out. It's something I'm going to have to keep in mind for future modules. Have the RCS sitting somewhere in the middle of the module we want to dock is probably the best idea, so you don't have to mess around like this. Yeah. So after a lot of hassle and frustration with this particularly poor design, I decided that it would be much easier to have the space station dock with the life support module rather than the life support module docking with the space station. So that's what I ended up doing, and luckily the space station has some RCS engines sitting right in the middle and has a nicely balanced center of mass relative to its thrust. So that turned out to be the best solution to this problem. You can see the space station inching its way towards the life support module, slowly and steadily. Very well balanced, I would say, but this is not going to be an option for future missions, where the space station will be much larger and much more unwieldy. But it works for now, so yeah. Just gotta keep it in mind for future designs. But that will be all the modules we are going to dock for this episode of KSP Real Solar System Campaign. For the next episodes, I'm going to be launching some crew compartments and scientific modules that are going to be sitting on the other side of the space station. And after that, we'll have a look at some shuttle trips, maybe, to the space station, and certainly some man capsule trips. Once that is done, we will start looking towards building a space station in orbit around the moon, which is going to take a lot more work than this. But for now, take care, and bye.